I stood in the corner of my sister-in-law's lavish living room, clutching my glass of wine like a shield. The room buzzed with laughter and conversation as family members celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary. I had spent hours getting ready, wearing the blue dress Michael always said he loved, though lately he barely looked at me. My husband Michael worked the room like a politician, moving from group to group with his perfect smile and charming laugh. I watched him chat with his younger cousins, noticing how his eyes lingered a bit too long on his secretary Jessica, who'd somehow been invited to our family gathering. The past few months had been different. Michael started working late, missing dinners, and treating our home like a hotel. When he was around, his words carried a sharp edge that cut deeper than any knife. But tonight was supposed to be special, our anniversary celebration with the whole family. I had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that things might improve. I noticed Jessica giggling at something Michael whispered in her ear. My stomach twisted as I saw his hand briefly touch her lower back when nobody else was looking. Well, nobody except me. I took another sip of wine, trying to calm my nerves. Everyone, gather around, Michael's voice boomed through the room. He stood near the fireplace, holding up his glass with that confident smile I once fell in love with. I'd like to make a toast to my lovely wife. His eyes met mine. But instead of warmth, I saw something that made my blood run cold: contempt. I should have known then, standing among our smiling relatives, that this night wasn't about celebrating our marriage. For Michael, it was about something else entirely. If only I had walked out right then before he opened his mouth again. Michael's voice filled the room as he started his toast. 10 years, he announced, swirling his wine glass. 10 long years with Sarah. There was something in the way he said long that made several guests shift uncomfortably. I felt my sister-in-law Amanda's concerned glance from across the room, but I kept my eyes fixed on my husband. The diamond ring on my finger felt suddenly heavy, like a chain rather than a symbol of love. You know, Michael continued, his smile growing sharper, when I married Sarah, she was quite the catch. Young, beautiful, full of life. He paused, and my heart started racing. But time hasn't been kind to everyone, has it, honey? Nervous laughter rippled through the room. I saw Jessica covering her smirk with her perfectly manicured hand. My cheeks burned as I realized what was coming. I mean, look at her now. Michael gestured toward me dramatically, standing there in that dress she bought years ago, pretending she can still pull it off. More uncomfortable laughter. Honey, even department stores have a clearance section for outdated items. The wine glass trembled in my hand. I wanted to run, to scream, to throw something at his smug face. But I stood frozen, watching my husband of 10 years publicly tear me apart. But hey, Michael raised his glass higher. At least she's consistent. Same old boring Sarah, with her little hobbies and simple dreams. While some of us, his eyes drifted to Jessica, know how to stay young and exciting. The room had grown painfully quiet now. Even those who had laughed earlier looked away in embarrassment. My brother-in-law Tom started to step forward, but Michael wasn't finished. To my wife, he declared, his voice dripping with mockery, who probably thought this was going to be a lovely anniversary celebration. Surprise, sweetheart. Consider this my gift to you, the truth. Nobody wants yesterday's news, especially not me. The sound of my wine glass shattering on the hardwood floor broke the silence. Red wine spread across the expensive flooring like blood, staining the hem of my blue dress, but I barely noticed. Everything had become crystal clear in that horrible moment. Without a word, I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Michael's laugh, followed by Jessica's high-pitched giggle. See, he called out. She can't even take a joke anymore. But I wasn't laughing, and I wasn't crying either. Something else was building inside me, something that would soon make Michael regret every word he'd just spoken. I drove through the dark streets with shaking hands, barely seeing the road through my blurred vision. I didn't even realize I was heading to my sister Emma's house until I found myself parked in her driveway. The porch light flicked on before I could reach the door. Sarah Emma appeared in her pajamas, her face changing from confusion to concern as she saw my state. Oh my God, what happened? I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The humiliation of the past hour crashed over me like a wave, and my legs gave out. Emma caught me before I could fall, pulling me into her warm embrace. I choked out, Michael. At the party, the sobs I'd been holding back finally broke free. Emma guided me inside to her cozy kitchen, the one place that had always felt safe since we were kids. She wrapped her favorite blanket around my shoulders and put the kettle on our family's solution to every crisis. I should have told you sooner, Emma said quietly, placing a steaming mug of tea in front of me. I've been seeing things, hearing things. I looked up at her, my hands clutching the warm mug. What things? Emma sat down beside me, taking my hand. Sarah, Michael's been. He's been seeing his secretary Jessica for months. Everyone at his office knows. She squeezed my hand tighter. I wanted to tell you, but I wasn't sure. The tea in my stomach turned to ice. Jessica, the way they'd looked at each other during the party suddenly made horrible sense. She was there tonight. They were laughing at me, Emma. In front of everyone. That bastard. Emma's voice shook with anger. After everything you've done for him. I stared into my tea, watching the ripples from my trembling hands. 10 years of marriage, of supporting his career, of trying to be the perfect wife, all thrown away for a younger woman. What am I going to do? I whispered, more to myself than to Emma. My sister's response surprised me. You're going to get even. With shaking hands, I opened my phone the next morning. Emma sat beside me on her worn leather couch, her presence giving me strength. You need to see everything, she said softly. No more hiding from the truth. I scrolled through Michael's social media, my heart pounding. There they were, dozens of photos I'd never seen before. Michael and Jessica at restaurants I'd never been to. Her sitting at his desk after hours wearing his suit jacket. Coffee dates, secret smiles, and lingering touches, all documented for anyone to see. Look at the dates, Emma pointed out. The oldest photo was from 6 months ago, right when Michael started working late, right when the cruel comments began, right when I stopped being good enough. There's more, Emma said, pulling up Jessica's profile. My stomach churned as I saw what she'd posted just last night. Hours after the party, some women just can't take a hint. Time to upgrade. The photo showed my husband's hand holding hers, my anniversary ring visible on his finger. He didn't even take off his ring, I whispered, the final piece of cruel irony hitting me. He humiliated me wearing the ring I gave him. Emma wrapped her arm around my shoulders as fresh tears fell. Sarah, look at me, she said firmly. You're not the one who should be ashamed. They are. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. You're being dramatic. Come home so we can talk about this like adults. Another buzz. You're embarrassing yourself by running away. And another. This is why we have problems. You can't handle anything anymore. I stared at the messages, seeing them for what they were: manipulation, pure and simple. Each word was designed to make me doubt myself, to crawl back to him. You know what the worst part is, I said, looking up at Emma. I believed I was the problem. That if I just tried harder, dressed better, stayed quieter. That's what he wanted you to think, Emma replied, taking my phone and placing it face down. But now you know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I sat in silence for a moment, something shifting inside me. The pain was still there, but something else was growing stronger: anger. Pure, justified anger. First, I said, my voice steadier than it had been all night. I'm going to call a lawyer. The next morning, while Emma was making breakfast, I found myself staring at her hallway mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, pale skin. I looked exactly like the defeated woman Michael thought I was. But something caught my eye behind my reflection: Emma's old camera, sitting on her bookshelf. You still have this? I picked up the camera, memories flooding back. Before Michael, before giving up my dreams to support his career, I'd been a photographer. Not just any photographer, I'd been good. Of course, Emma smiled, watching me turn the camera in my hands. Remember how you used to light up behind that thing? You saw beauty in everything. Until Michael said it was just a hobby, I muttered, remembering his dismissive words. Real careers make money, Sarah. Stop playing around with that camera. Emma placed a cup of coffee in front of me. You know, my friend Rachel is getting married next month. Her photographer just canceled. I looked up sharply. Emma, I haven't shot anything in years. But you could, she said firmly. The Sarah I know is still in there, the one who made magic with that camera. Just then, my phone buzzed again. Michael, the house feels empty without you. I miss you. Then immediately after, though, maybe it's time we both accept we're getting older. Changes happen. I turned off the phone, and something clicked into place. While I'd been mourning my marriage, he was already trying to manipulate me again. Rachel's wedding, I said suddenly. Does she still need a photographer? Emma's face lit up. Let me call her right now. Within an hour, I had my first client. Within 2, I was at the local camera shop, getting my old equipment serviced. The owner, David, spent an hour helping me pick out new lenses, his kind eyes and patient explanations a stark contrast to Michael's constant criticism. You've got a good eye, David commented, looking through some of the old work I'd brought along. These are special. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of pride. Not pride in being someone's wife, but pride in my talent. As I left the shop with my renewed equipment, David called out, "We have a weekly photography group that meets here. You should join us sometime." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. Maybe I will. Rachel's wedding turned out to be just the beginning. Her photos spread through social media like wildfire, and suddenly my phone was buzzing for a different reason: booking requests. Emma helped me set up a simple business page, and within weeks, I had more clients than I could handle. One afternoon, while I was editing photos at Emma's house, David from the camera shop stopped by with some equipment I'd ordered. He paused, looking at my work displayed on the laptop screen. "You've found your style again," he said, leaning in to look closer. "The way you capture emotions. It's rare." I felt my cheeks warm at his genuine praise, so different from Michael's backhanded compliments. Before he left, David mentioned again about the photography group. This time, I said yes. That's when Michael decided to make his move. He showed up at Emma's house unannounced, Jessica waiting in his car. The old me would have hidden inside. But I had clients waiting and a photography session to prepare for. "Sarah," he called out as I loaded my equipment into my car. "You're being childish? Running around with that camera again?" "Really?" I straightened up, meeting his eyes. "I'm not running, Michael. I'm working." "Working," he laughed, that cruel laugh I knew so well. "Taking pictures at birthday parties isn't work. Come home. We can fix this." I saw Jessica shift uncomfortably in his car, checking her phone. Looking at them both, I finally saw the truth they deserved each other. "No, Michael," I said calmly, closing my car trunk. "We can't fix this, but I'm fixing myself." His face darkened. "You'll regret this. You're nothing without me. Who's going to want a middle-aged woman with a camera?" I smiled, thinking of my growing client list, of David's encouraging words, of the confidence I'd found behind my lens. "That's where you're wrong. I'm not nothing. I never was." As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Michael's stunned face in my rearview mirror. My phone started buzzing with his messages, but I didn't need to read them anymore. I had a wedding to shoot, a photography group to join, and a new life to build. For the first time since that horrible party, I felt truly free. But I wasn't finished yet, not by a long shot. 2 months later, I sat in my makeshift studio at Emma's house, looking at the invitation in my hands. Our cousin Amy was hosting a big family reunion. Everyone would be there, including Michael and Jessica. "You don't have to go," Emma said, watching me carefully. But I had already made up my mind. I picked up my camera, and an idea formed. "And I'm going to be the photographer." Emma's eyes widened as she caught on. "Sarah, are you sure?" I opened my laptop, pulling up the folder I'd been collecting. Screenshots of Michael's messages to other women, not just Jessica. Bank statements showing money spent on hotels and expensive gifts. Photos from my clients who worked at his company, catching him and Jessica in compromising situations. "Remember how Michael loves an audience," I said, my voice steady. "How he needed everyone watching when he humiliated me." David, who had become a constant support in my life, knocked on the open door. "Hey, I brought those special lenses you wanted," he paused, sensing the tension. "Everything okay?" I showed him the invitation. "I'm going to give my husband exactly what he wants, an audience." David sat down beside me, his hand finding mine. Over the past months, he'd become more than just a photography mentor. He understood my need for revenge, but also my need to do it right. "Just promise me one thing," he said softly. "Do this for yourself, not for him." I squeezed his hand, grateful for his support. "That's exactly why I'm doing it. My camera tells the truth, David. It's time everyone saw Michael's truth." We spent the next week planning every detail. I created a slideshow of my recent work weddings, family portraits, events. Beautiful moments that proved my success. But hidden among them were the other photos, the ones that would show everyone who Michael was. The night before the reunion, I stood in front of my mirror. Gone was the insecure woman in the blue dress. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had found her power again through the lens of her camera. My phone buzzed a text from Michael. "Heard you're photographing tomorrow. Try not to embarrass yourself." I smiled at his message. He still thought he had all the power. But tomorrow, everyone will see the truth through my lens. The family reunion was in full swing when I arrived, camera in hand. I could feel Michael's eyes following me as I moved through the crowd, professionally taking photos of happy families and laughing children. "Well, look who's playing photographer." Michael's voice carried across the room. "How?" Cute Jessica giggled beside him, wearing a dress that was far too young for the family gathering. I just smiled and kept shooting. Click. Michael's hand on Jessica's waist. Click. His wedding ring still gleaming. Click. Their matching smug expressions. Finally, cousin Amy announced it was time for the slideshow I'd prepared. "Sarah's been kind enough to share some of her recent work with us," she said, dimming the lights. The first images drew gasps of appreciation: wedding photos and graduation portraits, all showing the beauty I'd captured over the past months. I watched Michael's face as his smirk slowly faded. Then came the other photos. Click. Michael and Jessica leaving a hotel. Click. Bank statements showing jewelry purchases on our anniversary jewelry Jessica was wearing right now. Click. Messages to other women, each one dated during our marriage. The room fell silent. Jessica stepped away from Michael, her face pale. "You said your wife knew. You said she was okay with us." I stepped forward, my voice clear and strong. 10 years ago, I married a man who convinced me I was nothing without him. 2 months ago, he humiliated me at our anniversary party. I looked directly at Michael. But he forgot something important. A photographer's job is to show the truth. Michael lunged for the laptop, but David was faster, stepping between us. Don't, he said quietly, his presence steady beside me. You had your audience last time, I continued. Now it's my turn. I'm filing for divorce, Michael. And thanks to these photos, I don't think your company will be too happy about your relationship with your secretary. The whispers started. Family members turned away from Michael. Jessica grabbed her purse and practically ran from the room, but I wasn't finished. Oh, and one more thing, I said, picking up my camera. I'm not just playing photographer. I own a successful studio now, which means I can afford a really good lawyer. Michael's face turned red with rage, but he had no power here. Not anymore. As he stormed out, I felt nothing but relief. The truth had finally come out through my lens. The weeks following the family reunion passed in a blur of sweet justice. Michael's company launched an investigation after receiving copies of my photos. Both he and Jessica were asked to resign. His carefully built reputation crumbled as quickly as our marriage had. I moved out of Emma's house and into my apartment above my new photography studio. David helped me paint the walls and set up my equipment, our hands brushing together as we worked. We didn't need to rush anything, we both knew we had all the time in the world. One morning, while I was editing wedding photos, my lawyer called. Michael had signed the divorce papers without a fight. His last message to me read, "You've ruined everything." I smiled, remembering how those words would have crushed me months ago. Now they felt like freedom. You okay, David asked, bringing me my favorite coffee. I looked around my studio, at the beautiful photos on the walls, proof of my talent and hard work. Through my window, I could see clients arriving for their sessions, excited to have their stories told through my lens. You know what I said, taking David's hand. I am. My phone buzzed with another booking request. Life was moving forward, better than before. The woman Michael had tried to shame at that party was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who had learned to see her worth through the lens of her camera. 1 year later, I stood in my expanded studio, adjusting my camera for an upcoming wedding shoot. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd become one of the most sought-after wedding photographers in town. My photos didn't just capture moments, they told stories of real love, the kind I'd finally found for myself. David walked in with 2 cups of coffee, just like he did every morning since we'd moved in together. As he kissed my cheek, I caught our reflection in the studio window, both of us smiling, both of us genuinely happy. Last week, I heard Michael had tried to reconcile with Jessica, only to find she'd moved on with someone closer to her age. He'd sent me one final message, "I miss who we were." I didn't respond. That chapter of my life was closed. My story could have ended at that family party, with tears and humiliation. Instead, it became a story of rediscovery, strength, and true love. Through my camera lens, I hadn't just captured other people's happiness, I'd found my own. Now, when I photograph weddings, I always tell my brides the same thing: make sure the person beside you loves you enough to celebrate your success, not tear you down. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. If this story touched your heart, please like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories about love, redemption, and finding your inner strength. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Sarah's situation? When did you realize she would come out stronger? Remember, sometimes life's hardest moments become our greatest turning points.